Have you noticed that as we grow older, some truths don't shout? They whisper, not with urgency, but with a kind of gentle insistence. It's as if time, once racing ahead of us, now walks beside us, softly holding up a mirror. And in that reflection, we begin to see what was always there, hidden beneath the noise, our patterns, our peace, our pain, and the quiet truths we once ignored. Some say these truths are harsh, but are they? Or have we just spent most of our lives trying not to look too closely? What if aging isn't about decline, but clarity? What if this chapter, often misunderstood, is actually the one where life becomes most honest? Tonight we won't deliver cold facts or bitter revelations. Instead, we'll sit together, as old friends might on a quiet porch, and gently unveil 13 truths, not to judge ourselves, but to understand ourselves. This is not a list, it's a conversation, a path lit by reflection. So settle in, not to search for answers, but to rest in awareness. Let's begin this journey inward, with open eyes, an open heart, and the soft courage to see what time is showing us. Part 1. The mind is not you. Have you ever noticed how your thoughts never really leave you alone? Even now, as you sit in the quiet, there may still be a voice within you, murmuring, remembering, planning, criticizing, wondering. It's strange, isn't it? How even when the world goes silent, our minds continue speaking. Some days it feels like our thoughts are passengers we never invited, or perhaps house guests who moved in long ago and refused to leave. And yet, most of us never stop to ask, who is thinking these thoughts? And are they really me? Let me tell you a story, a simple one, from the Zen tradition. There was once a young monk named Hoshin, who sought out a master renowned for his clarity of mind. Hoshin, like many of us, was plagued by constant mental chatter and longed for peace. One rainy evening, he finally sat before the old master and said, "Master, my thoughts are wild, like monkeys in a storm. I cannot quiet them. How can I find peace?" The master didn't answer right away. Instead, he began pouring tea for the monk. Slowly, steadily, the hot tea filled the cup. It rose to the brim. Then, still pouring, the tea began to overflow, spilling onto the table and dripping to the floor. "Master, stop," Hoshin cried out. "The cup is full. No more will fit." The master smiled and gently said, "Like this cup, your mind is full of opinions, worries, and stories. How can I show you peace unless you first empty your cup?" That simple gesture stayed with Hoshin for life, and perhaps it lingers with you now too. Because the truth is, most of us go through our days with overflowing minds, never stopping, never settling, always rehearsing, reviewing, regretting, reimagining. We mistake these thoughts for reality, and we wear them like clothes that no longer fit, but we're too afraid to take off. But Buddhism gently invites us to see things differently. The mind, it teaches, is not who you are. It is a tool, a powerful one, but it's not the master. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha said, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." But he didn't say, "You are your thoughts." No. Instead, he urged us to befriend the mind, like one would a wild horse, not by fighting it, but by patiently learning its ways, holding the reins lightly, and leading it towards stillness. Just imagine for a moment that your mind is a river. Most days, we're swept away by its currents, pulled downstream by memories, anxieties, desires. But what if, instead, you could stand on the bank and simply watch, not resist, not follow, just watch? Slowly you'd see that you are not the river, you are the watcher. And in that seeing, something remarkable happens. The water slows, the mind softens, and space appears. In that space, you begin to hear something quieter than thought, something more ancient than words. It's not dramatic, not loud, but it's steady. It's you. Now, let me ask you, when was the last time you felt truly at rest in your own mind, not distracted, not racing ahead to what's next, just quietly, fully here? If it's been a while, you're not alone, but the beauty is, it's never too late. In fact, the later chapters of life offer us a rare invitation to come home to ourselves after years of running. So tonight, as you listen to these words and breathe gently, consider this: what might change if you no longer believed every thought you thought? What freedom would come if you could step back, smile at the mind's chatter, and say, "Ah, there you go again, dear friend. But today, I will just watch." And with that, we flow gently into the next truth, one that touches something deeper. If the mind is not you, and its stories are not always real, then what truly causes our suffering? Let us walk slowly now into part 2. Pain is not the enemy. Part 2. Pain is not the enemy. There's a quiet moment that arrives for many of us as we age, somewhere between the aches in the knees and the heaviness in the chest, when we finally pause and ask, why does life still hurt, even after all these years? It's not just the body that stiffens. Sometimes it's the heart too. The heart that's loved and lost. The heart that's hoped and been disappointed. The heart that has grown wise but also, somehow, weary. We've been taught to run from pain, to fix it, numb it, ignore it. But what if pain isn't our enemy? What if, like an old teacher with a rough voice, it's trying to tell us something important? Let me tell you a story you may already know, but it deserves to be heard again, especially now. It's a story the Buddha himself told, a parable of the 2 arrows. One day the Buddha sat with his monks and said, when an ordinary person feels pain, it's as if they've been struck by 2 arrows. The first arrow is the event, the physical or emotional pain. The second arrow is the resistance, the why me, the fear, the anger, the mental suffering we layer on top. He continued, while we cannot always control the first arrow, we shoot ourselves with the second. And oh, how many second arrows we carry. A diagnosis becomes not just an illness, but a story of loss and fear. A goodbye becomes not just absence, but rejection. A wrinkle becomes not just age, but fading worth. But what if we stopped shooting that second arrow? What if, instead of fighting pain, we simply sat beside it, like an old friend who's come to visit, perhaps uninvited, but bringing lessons nonetheless? I once knew an elderly woman in our temple community, Sister Hana. She had spent most of her life caring for others, raising children, supporting her husband through illness, volunteering at the local hospital. But when she turned 78, her own body began to fail her. Arthritis gripped her hands, making even prayer beads hard to hold. One day, I found her sitting quietly under a Bodhi tree, her eyes misted not from pain, but from clarity. I used to hate the pain, she said, smiling faintly, but now I just listen to it. It reminds me that I'm still alive, and it slows me down enough to notice things again. The way the wind feels on my face, or the taste of warm tea. She paused, then added, maybe pain is just life, asking us to be more tender. That moment stayed with me, because it echoed something the Buddha taught, that our suffering doesn't arise from pain itself, but from our refusal to accept its presence. Pain asks for presence, not panic, and when we meet it with gentleness rather than resistance, it often softens just a little. Sometimes, that's all we need. So tonight, as you sit with yourself, perhaps with an old ache in the back, or a heart that still carries memories that sting, ask softly, What would it be like to stop resisting this? Not to like it, not to want it, but simply to breathe through it, without adding a second arrow. Because here's the quiet truth. The world will always bring its share of discomfort, but how much we suffer, that's something we participate in. And as we grow older, we have a choice: to harden or to soften, to close or to open, and perhaps, just perhaps, to see that pain is not the opposite of peace, but the path to it. Let us now continue, for where there is pain, there is often comparison, and comparison too is a master of suffering. Let us walk forward slowly into part 3. Comparison is the silent thief. Part 3. Comparison is the silent thief. There's a quiet sadness that creeps into our hearts when we look at others and wonder if we've fallen behind. It can arrive at any stage in life, but it becomes particularly heavy as the years pass, when we glance at someone else's vitality, their achievements, their seemingly perfect family, or even just the ease with which they seem to move through the world. And quietly, without needing to speak, a voice inside us says, "Why don't I have that? Did I take a wrong turn somewhere?" But have you ever really stopped and asked, compared to what? Compared to whom? Comparison is a thief. It doesn't knock on the door or shout through the window. No, it slips in softly, like a fog. It dulls the colors of your own life and replaces them with shadows of someone else's. And the cruelest part, it doesn't just steal joy, it makes you forget you ever had any to begin with. There's a well-loved story in Buddhist folklore that speaks to this so gently. It's about a proud, radiant lily that bloomed each spring near a still pond. She stood tall, with her white petals opening to greet the sun, and she loved her reflection in the water. One year, however, a lotus began to grow beside her, slowly, humbly from the mud. The lily, for the first time, noticed something strange. The lotus, though less elegant, seemed to possess a peace she did not have. Its bloom was slower, deeper, as if it knew a secret the lily had missed. Soon the lily became restless. She began leaning toward the pond more often, checking how her petals compared to the lotus's. Was she as radiant, as admired? Her days, once filled with sunlight and serenity, grew heavy with silent competition. She forgot the joy of blooming. One day, an old turtle crawled by and said, "Why are you so troubled, flower?" And she replied, "Because I'm no longer sure I'm enough." The turtle simply chuckled and said, "You were always enough. You just stopped seeing it when you started looking sideways." The story may be simple, but the lesson is not. As the lotus reminds us, beauty doesn't bloom through comparison. It rises through acceptance, especially of where we've come from, of the mud we've emerged from, and of the way we are still unfolding, even now. You see, in the West, we are often taught to measure ourselves, to chart progress, to climb ladders, to compete, even when no one else is watching. But the Dharma teaches a different rhythm. It reminds us that each being has their own path, their own timing, and their own lessons. A snowflake doesn't envy another. It simply falls. I once knew a retired teacher, Mr. Allen, who lived alone by a small orchard. He'd taught for nearly 40 years, yet he never received any major awards, never published a book, never gave a speech that went viral. One day, I asked him if he ever felt forgotten. He smiled, plucked an orange from the tree and said, "This fruit doesn't ask the tree next to it whether it was seen. It simply ripens. I've lived a good life. I loved my students. That's enough." His words were a kind of awakening for me, because, in truth, no one's life can be fully understood from the outside. The smiles, the photos, the family gatherings, all of it is a surface. Beneath every appearance is a hidden story, a private sorrow, a joy no one else can understand. And so comparison is not just misleading, it's hollow. So tonight, if you find yourself comparing, your life, your body, your past, to another's. Take a moment, breathe, and ask yourself, would I trade my path for theirs, even if I had to carry their hidden burdens too? Because most of us only see each other's highlight reels, not the full story. And perhaps the most radical act of self-love after 60 is this: to look at your own life, just as it is, and whisper, I am still blooming. I do not need to measure to know I matter. As we move forward, let's carry that softness into our next reflection, because often our comparisons stem from our need to be loved, our desire to feel seen, held, wanted. But what happens when we realize that love too has its illusions? Let us now walk gently into part 4, Love Without Ownership. Part 4, Love Without Ownership. Love as we often experience it is tender, yes, but also tangled. It begins with warmth, a gesture, a gaze, or a quiet companionship. Over time, though, something shifts. What started as presence often becomes possession. We begin to hold not just hands, but expectations. We say, I love you, but quietly we add, so you must not leave me, so you must make me feel whole, so you must reflect back the version of me I want to believe in. Isn't that strange? That something as sacred as love can become so quietly heavy. Let me tell you a story not found in books, but one I heard long ago from a wandering monk in northern Thailand. He spoke of a layman named Rami, a potter by trade, who deeply loved his only daughter, Lila. She was the joy of his life, the light in his aging eyes. Every day, he would sculpt small clay figures for her, animals, flowers, even little birds that she would hang by the window. His love was pure, or so he thought. But when Lila came of age, she fell in love with a traveler, a soft-spoken merchant, who promised her a life far from their small village. Rami was devastated. He argued, pleaded, even wept. If you leave, he said, you will break my heart. And Lila, with tears in her eyes, replied, Father, have you loved me, or have you simply feared losing me? It was a question that stopped time. Days passed. The birds in the window gathered dust. Then one morning, Rami woke early. He went to his workshop and sculpted one final gift, a clay bird with its wings wide open. He gave it to Lila, pressed it into her palm, and said, If love means caging you to keep you, then I have not loved you well. Go, child, fly with both wings. This story, simple as it is, carries a wisdom many of us only begin to understand late in life. We realize that the people we've loved the most were never ours to keep. Not children, not partners, not even old friends. The Buddhist path gently reminds us that all beings are like clouds drifting across the sky of our life. They appear, they bless us with their shape and shade, and then they move on. And that's okay. As the Buddha taught, attachment is the root of suffering. But to be clear, this does not mean we stop loving. It means we learn to love without clinging, without turning people into projects, without asking them to fill the spaces we've not yet made peace with in ourselves. I've seen this again and again among elders, those who once tried to shape their children's lives now learning to sit quietly and simply witness. Those who once lost sleep over unreturned affections, now finding solace in the company of the present moment. It is a kind of liberation that does not come quickly. It is earned through heartbreak, through letting go, and through understanding that love, in its purest form, is freedom. So tonight, if there is someone you love, perhaps someone who is far, or who has changed, or who no longer walks beside you, consider this. Can you love them without needing them to be anything but what they are? Can you bless them with your presence, even in their absence? And more importantly, Can you love yourself in the same way? Not as a fixed version of who you used to be or who you hoped you'd become, but just as you are, here, now, because true love, like true wisdom, opens its hands, and in that open palm, no one is trapped and nothing is lost. There is only the gentle recognition of connection and the willingness to let it breathe. And yet, what happens when that connection is broken? Not by change, but by harm. When someone has caused you deep pain and their memory clings like smoke. Let us now walk forward to the next truth, where healing waits with quiet patience. Let us enter part 5. Forgiveness is a doorway. Part 5. Forgiveness is a doorway. Forgiveness. Just saying the word can stir something deep in the chest. Maybe it brings a soft ache, a flicker of memory, or even a quiet resistance. Because to forgive, truly forgive, is not easy. Especially when the wounds were carved long ago and the person who caused them has long since vanished into the pages of your past. And yet, forgiveness is not about excusing, forgetting, or pretending it didn't hurt. It's something more profound, more sacred. It's the way we reclaim the parts of ourselves that we left behind in someone else's shadow. There's a Buddhist parable I often return to, especially when speaking with those who carry the weight of old betrayals. It's the story of two monks who had taken a vow never to touch a woman. One day, as they traveled through the forest, they came upon a river swollen from the rains. At the riverbank stood a woman in fine robes, fearful of crossing the rushing water. Without a word, the older monk gently lifted her onto his back and carried her across. He set her down safely on the other side, bowed, and continued walking. For hours, the younger monk fumed in silence. Finally, he exploded. "How could you do that? We swore never to touch a woman." The elder smiled softly and said, "Brother, I set her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her? Isn't that how it is? Something happens perhaps decades ago, and we think we've moved on. But inside, we're still holding it, still replaying the scene, still clenching our fists around the pain. And in doing so, we hurt ourselves again and again, far more than the original wound ever did." Forgiveness, then, is not a favor we do for others. It is a kindness we offer to our own hearts. I once met a man named Walter at a quiet temple near Santa Fe. He was in his 70s, a retired carpenter with thick hands and tired eyes. For years, he carried bitterness toward his younger brother, who had stolen their family inheritance. They hadn't spoken in over 30 years. What he did was unforgivable, Walter told me one day, and yet I'm the one who hasn't slept in peace since. I sat with him in silence for a while before gently asking, if he never apologized, never made it right, would you still choose peace over pain? He looked at me, really looked, and then asked something I'll never forget. Do I have to talk to him to forgive him? I smiled and replied, no. You only have to stop letting him live in your heart rent-free. That afternoon, Walter wrote his brother's name on a small piece of paper, placed it under a rock by the Buddha statue, and whispered, I release you, I release me. He never saw his brother again, but when I met Walter years later, he told me he'd slept soundly every night since. Forgiveness does not require reconciliation. It does not mean inviting someone back into your life. It means allowing yourself to move forward without dragging the past behind you like a rusted chain. As the Buddha said, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. So tonight, ask yourself gently, who am I still carrying? Whose name lives in my chest like a bruise? And more importantly, what would my heart feel like if I let them go? Not because they deserve it, but because I do. This path isn't easy. It takes courage, tenderness, and time. But every time you release a grudge, you reclaim a piece of yourself. And with each step, the heart grows a little lighter, a little freer. Now, having laid down some of what has burdened us, let us explore what true strength looks like, not in force, but in stillness, not in pride, but in kindness. Let us move gently into Part 6. True strength is silent. Part 6. True strength is silent. We often grow up believing that strength must be loud, that it looks like shouting to be heard, standing tall to be seen, or forcing our way through life's obstacles with gritted teeth and clenched fists. But with time, life has a way of softening those beliefs. Perhaps you've felt it too. The kind of wisdom that whispers rather than roars. The kind of strength that sits quietly in the corner of a room and doesn't need to prove a thing. True strength, as the Buddha taught, isn't about domination, it's about presence. It's the patience to stay kind when you are misunderstood, the courage to walk away when your pride wants to fight, and the inner fortitude to hold silence when the world demands noise. Let me tell you about a monk named Ajahn Talo. He lived at the edge of a forest monastery in Laos and was known not for his sermons or status, but for his unwavering calm. During a time of civil unrest, soldiers came to the monastery, accusing the monks of harboring rebels. They stormed the temple, shouting, demanding, threatening. Most monks trembled, but Ajahn Talo simply sat beneath the Bodhi tree, eyes open, unmoved. The commander approached him and snarled, "Why aren't you afraid? Do you not fear death?" Ajahn looked up and said, "Death comes whether I shake or sit still. I choose stillness." The commander, confused but somehow disarmed, lowered his weapon. The soldiers left. No one was harmed. Later, a young novice asked the elder, "How were you so brave?" Ajahn Talo replied, "When a tree is rooted deep, it does not flinch in the wind." His words, like his presence, carried a truth that reaches beyond conflict zones and into our everyday lives. Because life in its own way is always testing our roots. A loved one says something hurtful, a plan unravels, the body begins to ache in places it never used to. In those moments, we're given a choice. Do we react with noise or respond with presence? You see, there's a kind of power that doesn't need applause. It doesn't shout, "Look at me." It simply exists, like water that carves canyons, not through force, but through quiet persistence. That's what Buddhist teachings call metta, or loving kindness. And make no mistake, it is not passive, it's the most powerful form of strength there is. To meet the world with gentleness, especially when it's unkind. To choose compassion when vengeance feels easier. To offer softness not because you're weak, but because you know what suffering feels like, and you choose not to add to it. I once spoke with a retired nurse named Gloria. She had spent over 40 years working in palliative care. She'd seen countless lives come to a close, some peacefully, others full of regret. I asked her once, "What's the strongest thing you've ever witnessed?" She thought for a long moment before saying, "There was a woman, Marianne, whose daughter had stolen from her, lied to her, disappeared for years. One day the daughter showed up, broken, addicted. Marianne opened her arms and simply said, 'I'm glad you're home.' That was strength. Yes, strength is not in how tightly we can grip, but in how gracefully we can let go. It's not in controlling others, but in mastering our own reactions. As the Buddha reminded us, a man is not called wise because he talks and talks again, but if he is peaceful, loving, and fearless, then he is in truth called wise. So tonight, ask yourself, when was the last time I mistook silence for weakness, or gentleness for naivety? And perhaps deeper still, what if the greatest strength I can offer now is my calm, my steady breath, my refusal to add harm, even when I have been harmed. Let that settle in your chest like a warm stone. Feel its weight, its comfort, because now, having tasted the strength of stillness, we can better see the games the ego plays, the ways it tries to distract us from peace by insisting we must prove something, be someone, win everything. Let us step softly into Part 7, The Ego Fears Silence. Part 7, The Ego Fears Silence. There's a curious thing that happens when we sit alone, without distraction, and allow silence to stretch its long arms across the room. For some, it brings peace. But for many, especially those of us used to carrying years of doing, proving, striving, it brings a kind of discomfort that feels strangely loud. Thoughts race, memories echo, and suddenly it's as if something inside begins to panic at the quiet. That something is the ego, not in the grandiose, prideful sense we often imagine, but in the deeply human part of us that wants so badly to be seen, validated, and known. The ego isn't evil, it's just afraid of not mattering, afraid of being forgotten, afraid that if it's not constantly building a self-image, then maybe it doesn't exist at all. I remember a story once told to me by an old Zen teacher from Kyoto, a gentle man who spoke like water flows, quiet, smooth, with pauses deeper than his words. He spoke of a wandering seeker who came to a monastery, begging to find enlightenment. The monks there were silent. No one responded to his questions, his insistence, or even his anger. Days passed. Finally, the seeker stood in the temple courtyard and shouted, "Why won't anyone talk to me? Don't you know who I am?" An elderly monk sweeping leaves looked up and said, "We are silent, not because we do not know who you are, but because you do not." That one line unraveled the seeker. He wept, he stayed, and slowly in the quiet, he began to meet the parts of himself that had always been hidden beneath noise. Isn't that so often the case? When we're busy, we feel in control. When others praise us, we feel secure. But take those things away, and what's left? Just you. And that you might feel unfamiliar at first, especially if your sense of self has been wrapped up in your career, your role in the family, your accolades, or even your physical abilities. So many of these begin to shift after 60. Children leave, retirement arrives, the body slows, and suddenly, the identity we wore like a well-tailored suit begins to feel loose, or even empty. But here is the hidden gift of silence. It strips away the roles and reveals the being beneath. Not the worker, the parent, the neighbor, the achiever. Just presence, just breath, just life, as it is, without costume. The Buddha spoke often about anatta, the concept of no self. But this doesn't mean we don't exist. It means we are not fixed, rigid things. We are fluid, ever-changing, and the self we think we are, our ego, is often just a collection of habits, memories, and roles. In silence, those begin to fall away, and it can be frightening, but it can also be freeing. There was an elderly sculptor named Elias I once met during a retreat. He'd lost his wife, his vision was fading, and his hands, once so steady, were now wrinkled and slow. "I don't know who I am anymore," he confessed. But after a week of sitting in silence, he said something that gave me chills. "I used to sculpt faces, figures, forms. Now in silence, I feel I'm being sculpted. Something is carving away all I'm not, and I think what's left might be more beautiful." So tonight, if you feel a resistance to quiet, if something inside you squirms at the stillness, don't rush to fill the space. Sit with it, watch it, listen to the voice that says, "You must do more, you must be more," and gently ask it, "Who are you without the noise?" Because when we stop clinging to our image, we begin to inhabit our essence. And that essence is not loud, it does not demand, it simply is. And now, having touched the fear of silence and having survived it, we are ready for the next sacred truth. One that asks us to do something radical, to let go, not because we've given up, but because we are growing up. Let us now walk with soft steps into Part 8. Let go, and you are free. Part 8. Let go, and you are free. Letting go. These two words sound so simple, don't they? And yet, they are among the hardest instructions the heart will ever receive. Because to let go means to loosen our grip, not just on things or people, but on ideas, identities, dreams that once defined us. And especially in our later years, letting go often feels like loss. But if we look closely, it may not be loss at all. It may be liberation in disguise. There is a story from the Buddhist tradition, told often around flickering temple lamps in the evening, that speaks to this quiet truth. It is the story of the man hanging from a cliff. Once there was a man who wandered through a mountain path and, not watching his step, slipped and began to fall. In desperation, he reached out and caught a branch growing from the side of the cliff. As he dangled hundreds of feet above jagged rocks, he cried out to the heavens, "Is anyone there? Help me." A voice answered, deep and calm, "Yes, I am here." The man, trembling, asked, "What should I do?" The voice replied, "Let go." The man looked down at the abyss below, hesitated, and said nothing more. The next morning, they found him still clinging to the branch, frozen in fear. Just 3 feet beneath him was a ledge wide enough to stand on. The story is as symbolic as it is haunting. How often do we cling out of fear? Fear of falling, of failing, of the unknown, when just beneath us is a space of safety and new beginnings. How many of us spend entire decades holding on to identities we've outgrown, to relationships that have shifted, to dreams that no longer fit the soul we've become? Letting go does not mean erasing what came before. It means honoring it, blessing it, and then releasing it from our grasp, so our hands are open to what's next. Like autumn trees letting go of their leaves, not because the leaves are bad, but because winter is coming, and space must be made for what follows. I remember speaking to an elderly man, Mr. Raymond, who had been a CEO of a major company for 30 years. After retirement, he felt adrift. I was important, he told me. Now I'm invisible. We sat under a tree behind the temple, watching its leaves fall in soft spirals to the earth. I said, this tree was important in spring. It flowered. In summer, it shaded us. But now, in letting go, it shows us grace. It teaches us how to release with dignity. Tears welled in his eyes. I never thought letting go could be beautiful. The Buddha once said, "You only lose what you cling to," and oh, how true that is. We fear losing control, but control was never real. We fear losing youth, but youth was always passing. We fear losing love, but love, when real, is not something to possess. It's something to give. So tonight, ask yourself gently, what am I still holding on to that is holding me back? Maybe it's a regret. Maybe a version of yourself from years ago that you're still chasing. Maybe a story about how life should have turned out. And then ask, what would it feel like to place it down, just for tonight, just to rest? Because here's the secret. Letting go doesn't make you weak. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're brave enough to trust what's beyond your grasp. And in doing so, you make space for something new to arrive, often something quieter, truer, more aligned with the person you've become. And as we empty our hands of what no longer serves us, we begin to see more clearly the path ahead, not paved with ambition or certainty, but with clarity. Clarity about what matters, what remains, and what is worth returning to. So let us walk forward now with lighter steps, into a reflection that cuts deeper than pride and richer than accomplishment. For beyond the need to hold on is the wisdom of enough. Let us now continue with part 9. Enough is a sacred word. Part 9. Enough is a sacred word. There comes a moment in each life, sometimes quietly in the middle of the night, sometimes loudly in the face of disappointment, when we whisper to ourselves, "Is this all there is?" And that question, as innocent as it sounds, carries the echo of so many years spent chasing, comparing, longing. It is a question born from the illusion that we are always one more thing away from being complete. One more dollar, one more compliment, one more milestone, just one more. Until life has passed by like a train we never boarded. But Buddhism offers us a radical truth. Contentment isn't something we find at the end of achievement. It's something we awaken to in the middle of surrender. Enough is not the consolation prize. It's the treasure we've been blind to all along. Let me tell you about an old story. Simple but sharp, like a bell struck in the early morning. A young man once asked a revered monk, "What more can I do to attain enlightenment? I have fasted, studied, meditated, renounced pleasures, yet I feel no peace." The monk smiled and poured him a cup of tea. He poured until the cup was full and then kept pouring. Tea spilled over the rim onto the floor. "Why did you do that?" the young man exclaimed. The monk said, "Your mind is like this cup, overflowing with ambition, effort, seeking. Until you empty it, there will be no room for wisdom." The lesson here is not that effort is wrong. It's that endless striving is a trap. We are taught in the modern world to measure worth through productivity, to rank our value like grades on a test. But the Dharma teaches a quieter truth. You were already whole before you achieved anything, before the titles, the trophies, the roles. You, as you are now, breathing in this very moment, are enough. I once sat with an elderly woman named Teresa, who had spent most of her adult life caring for others, her children, her husband, her ailing sister. She confessed to me, "Sometimes I wonder if I ever did enough, if I mattered." I asked her, "What does it feel like to sit here now with your hands resting, your breath steady?" She looked at her palms, smiled faintly and said, "It feels like I can finally rest." And maybe that's the point. Maybe enough isn't a number but a feeling, a soft inner knowing that you've loved as best you could, lived as honestly as you knew how, and given what you had, even when it wasn't perfect. The Buddha reminded his disciples often, "Contentment is the greatest wealth." And isn't that true? A person with enough feels no urgency to prove, no need to compete, no hunger to possess what doesn't belong to them. They walk slowly, speak gently. Their presence is like shade on a hot day, unassuming but deeply nourishing. And so tonight I invite you to sit with this sacred word, enough. Let it ring in your chest. Let it soften your expectations. Let it wrap around the places in you that still whisper, "Not yet, not quite." Ask yourself, what if I stopped measuring? What if I stopped chasing? What if this moment right now was not a stepping stone but a destination? Breathe into that possibility, and as you do, you may find that your shoulders relax, that the mind quiets, that the soul, tired of running, begins to settle into a deeper home. From here, we do not collapse into passivity, we rise into clarity. Because when you know you are enough, you become free to offer your presence, not to get anything, but simply to give. And from that place of abundance, not scarcity, we begin to understand the sacred rhythm of time, how to spend it, how to honor it, and most of all, how to be with it, rather than always trying to outrun it. Let us now walk with deeper gratitude into part 10. Time is not a currency, but a companion. Part 10. Time is not a currency but a companion. For much of our lives we are taught to treat time like money. We spend it, we save it, we waste it, we even invest it, always hoping for some kind of return, more success, more memories, more meaning. And so it's no wonder that as we grow older, we may begin to feel like the balance in our account is running low. We start counting days like coins, measuring each hour with a sense of urgency, asking, am I using this time wisely? Have I done enough? Is it too late? But what if time was never meant to be a currency? In the Buddhist tradition, time is seen not as something to conquer, but as something to companion, something to walk beside with reverence, not to race against in fear. And when we shift our relationship to time, we also shift the way we live. Let me tell you about a gentle story from the Zen tradition. A student once asked their master, "What is the secret to peace?" The master replied, "Eat when hungry, sleep when tired." The student, confused, said, "But that's what everyone does." The master smiled. "No, that's what everyone thinks they do. But when they eat, their mind is on tomorrow. When they sleep, their thoughts are on yesterday. True peace comes when you do what time is asking of you now. Isn't that powerful? So many of us live in moments we're not actually in. We sip tea while scrolling through regret. We take walks while mentally fast-forwarding to next week's worries. But time, like a dear old friend, only shows up in the present. And if we're not there to greet it, it slips quietly by, unnoticed. I met a man named Jerome once, a widower in his 80s who kept a garden in his small backyard. I asked him what his secret to happiness was. He looked at his hands, caked in earth, and said, "I stopped trying to make the most of time. I just started being with it. I water the tomatoes slowly. I talk to the wind. I let the sun rest on my face for as long as it wants." There was no urgency in his voice, no sense of rushing, just presence. And that, I realized, was the most luxurious way to live. The Buddha once said, "The trouble is, you think you have time." But he didn't say this to frighten us. He said it to wake us up, not to panic, but to presence. To help us see that the only time we ever truly have is now, not yesterday's guilt, not tomorrow's fears, just this inhale, just this exhale. So tonight, I invite you to ask not, how much time do I have left, but rather, how deeply can I live in the time I have now? Because when we walk beside time, instead of behind it or ahead of it, it becomes a kind of sacred companion, patient, wise, and always quietly guiding us back to the here and now. And when we live this way, when time becomes presence, not pressure, we begin to notice things we'd overlooked for decades. The warmth in a loved one's laugh, the way wind moves through trees, the joy in a simple, ordinary meal. These are not small things, they are everything. And from this softened awareness, we begin to understand something deeper still, that life isn't about managing time, but about being time. Being the moment itself, flowing with it, not against it, trusting its unfolding. And so, as we step forward now, with time as our companion rather than our captor, we find ourselves ready to meet another great lesson. One that holds both challenge and liberation, the wisdom of not needing to always be right. Let us now enter part 11. Being right is overrated. Be kind instead. Part 11. Being right is overrated. Be kind instead. In the early years of life, many of us are rewarded for being right. The correct answer on a test, the clever retort in a debate, the winning argument in a disagreement. And so, almost without noticing, we begin to prize correctness like a badge, something that proves we are smart, capable, valuable. But as we age, and especially as we begin to walk the quieter path of wisdom, we start to notice something. The need to be right often builds walls where bridges should have been. There's an old Buddhist tale that captures this beautifully. Two monks were arguing about the movement of a flag in the wind. "The flag is moving," one insisted. "You can see it waving." "No," said the other. "The wind is moving. The flag only responds." They debated for hours, each one certain of his point. Finally, a Zen master overheard and said, "You are both wrong. It is not the flag that moves. It is not the wind. It is your mind that moves." And just like that, the argument fell away, along with the illusion that being right was somehow more valuable than being awake. I remember a woman named Helen from one of my retreats, an elegant lady in her 70s who wore scarves like stories, each one with a memory attached. She spoke candidly one evening about her strained relationship with her son. "We haven't spoken in 2 years," she said. "He made choices I didn't agree with, and I couldn't stay silent." Someone gently asked her, "What hurts more now, that he made those choices, or that he's gone from your life?" Her eyes welled up. That he's gone. That moment was a turning point for her, not because she was wrong and needed to admit it, but because she realized that rightness had become a cage and love was waiting just outside the bars. In Buddhism, we are often reminded that the mind clings not just to possessions, but to views, to opinions, to the need to be the one who knows. But when we cling too tightly to our righteousness, we shut the door on compassion. We forget that every person we meet carries a story, a struggle, a scar we cannot see. And so even when we are correct, we can still cause harm. And that harm echoes far more deeply than a disagreement ever should. The Buddha once said, "Hatred is never appeased by hatred. By non-hatred alone is hatred appeased." This is an eternal law. There is something deeply humbling about growing older and realizing that the world does not need our opinions nearly as much as it needs our gentleness. That being right in the moment might win the battle, but kindness is what wins hearts over time. And kindness, you see, is not weakness. It's not agreement or surrender. It's the willingness to see beyond the argument into the aching human behind it. It's pausing before we react. It's choosing to soften rather than sharpen. It's the quiet power of listening more than speaking. Tonight, perhaps there is someone you've disagreed with, someone you've distanced from, not because of betrayal, but because of belief. Could you, just for a moment, let go of being right, to reach for something more sacred? Could you ask what matters more to me, connection or being correct? Because at the end of our lives, it's rarely our winning arguments we remember. It's the people we held close, the kindnesses we gave without needing to be acknowledged, the moments we chose peace over pride. And so, as we release the weight of needing to be right, our hearts open to something even more vital. The joy of presence itself, the deep, nourishing experience of simply being here, without judgment, without performance, without expectation. Let us now move with gentleness into Part 12. Presence is the purest gift. Part 12. Presence is the purest gift. In a world that constantly urges us to do more, achieve more, and be more, it's easy to forget the simple, radiant power of just being fully here, not half in yesterday and half in tomorrow. Not tangled in thoughts or obligations, but grounded body, breath, and awareness in this single, unfolding moment. As we grow older, the value of presence becomes clearer. Time sharpens our perception. We begin to notice how fleeting each breath is, how fragile each shared glance, how quickly a season passes, and in that noticing, we begin to understand something profound. Presence is not just a virtue, It is an offering, a sacred gift we can give to others and to ourselves. Let me share with you the story of Ananda, one of the Buddha's closest disciples. He once asked the Blessed One, "Isn't good friendship half of the holy life?" But the Buddha corrected him gently. "No, Ananda, good friendship is the whole of the holy life. And what is friendship, if not the willingness to be fully present with another, to sit with them in joy or sorrow, without distraction, without trying to fix, without needing to say the perfect thing?" There was once a woman named Marjorie who came to our Sangha. She had lost her husband of 48 years and was navigating the lonely terrain of grief. She didn't want advice or platitudes. She just wanted someone to be with her in the quiet, not to fill the silence, but to share it. So we sat, no words, just presence. After a long pause, she whispered, "I don't feel so alone anymore." That is the healing power of presence. It doesn't solve problems, it doesn't erase pain, but it says, "I am here with you, I see you, I hear you, you are not alone." And it begins with being present to ourselves. So often, we go through the motions of daily life, eating, walking, cleaning, without truly inhabiting those moments. But when we bring awareness to them, something changes. A cup of tea becomes a ritual. Washing our face becomes an act of reverence. Listening to a bird's call becomes a meditation. The Buddha called this sati, or mindfulness. It is not about technique or performance. It's about remembrance. Remembering to come home to the moment, to this body, to this breath. And when we are present, we begin to see the beauty we'd forgotten. The warmth of sunlight on wrinkled skin, the scent of the earth after rain, the simple miracle of waking up each morning still breathing, still capable of loving. One man, Arthur, once told me, "I spent so much of my life trying to prove I was worth something. I missed entire decades worrying about what's next. Now I just sit on my porch and watch the clouds move across the sky. I think this might be the richest I've ever felt." Yes, because in presence, we touch eternity. Not the eternity of endless time, but the eternity that lives in a single, undivided moment of awareness. A moment where nothing is missing, nothing is lacking, and everything, just as it is complete. So tonight I ask you, can you be here, right now? Can you set aside the past, the to-do list, the quiet ache of not yet, and just sit with yourself as you are, without needing to become anything more? Because this, dear friend, is where life truly happens. Not in memories, not in plans, but in this precise moment where your breath meets the air and your heart meets the stillness of being. And it is from this still, awake presence that we prepare ourselves for one final truth, one that brings humility, clarity, and freedom all at once. Let us now continue gently into part 13. You are not the center of the universe, and that is beautiful. Part 13. You are not the center of the universe, and that is beautiful. There's a certain relief that comes with age, a softening of the ego's need to be the star of every story, the center of every room, the one who must always be acknowledged, understood, or praised. For many, it takes a lifetime to realize that being the center of the universe is not only impossible, it's exhausting. But what a beautiful turning point it is when we no longer need the spotlight, when we can quietly step back and feel, not smaller, but more connected to the vastness around us. There's a story in Buddhist lore about a young monk who asked his teacher, "What is the path to enlightenment?" The teacher took him to a stream and told him to look into the water. "What do you see?" "My reflection," the monk replied. "And what else?" the teacher asked. The monk hesitated. "Just me." The teacher then stirred the water with a stick until ripples blurred the image. "Now what do you see?" Nothing. The master smiled. Good. When you no longer see only yourself, the world can begin to appear. It's a teaching both humbling and liberating. The ego wants to center everything: pain, joy, even suffering. When things go wrong, it says, "Why me?" When things go right, it says, "Look at me." But Buddhism reminds us of anatta, the doctrine of non-self, not to erase our existence, but to free us from the illusion that we are the sole author of reality. In truth, we are threads in a much larger tapestry, stars in a sky we didn't create, breath moving through a body we didn't design. This realization isn't meant to diminish us, but to awaken awe, to feel part of something immense, sacred, interconnected. I once sat under a great oak tree with a retired teacher named Samuel. He'd spent his whole life guiding others, and now, in his solitude, he was learning how to let go of the identity he'd wrapped himself in for decades. "I used to think my purpose was to leave a legacy," he said. "But now I wonder, maybe it's enough just to have been a part of the whole. And isn't that enough? To have been a leaf that turned toward the sun, a hand that held another, a presence that smiled at a stranger." We may never know the ripple effects of our small kindnesses, the unseen comfort of our quiet strength, the healing that came from our listening. But that's the beauty of not being the center. What we offer flows freely, without ego, without attachment. The Buddha often likened the awakened one to a lotus, rooted in the mud, but rising toward the light, not to be admired, but simply to bloom. Not for applause, but because blooming is what it was born to do. And so tonight, I ask you, what burden might you lay down if you no longer needed to be the center? What new humility, what new lightness might you feel if you allowed yourself to be just one sacred note in the symphony of existence? Because when we stop obsessing over our place in the story, we begin to appreciate the story itself. When we stop trying to control the outcome, we start to dance with what is. When we stop grasping for meaning, we start living in it. You are not the center of the universe, and thank goodness, because the universe is not something to hold. It's something to participate in, with reverence, with openness, with awe. And from this final truth, we do not retreat. We bow to life, to impermanence, to the mystery that holds us all. And in that bow, we find the soft, radiant truth the Buddha saw beneath the Bodhi tree, that freedom is not found in becoming more, but in becoming less entangled. And so, dear friend, let this truth sit gently in your chest as you drift toward rest. You are a part of something vast and beautiful. You always have been. As we come to the end of this quiet reflection, let's gently gather the truths we've uncovered. Truths not meant to wound, but to wake us. We spoke of the ego's fear of silence, and the freedom that comes when we stop trying to be right. We looked at the beauty of letting go, the sacredness of simply being present, and the deep peace that arises when we no longer see ourselves as the center of everything. And we asked, what if enough has been here all along, waiting only for us to notice? These are not just ideas to consider, they are doorways. Each truth is a soft mirror, inviting you not to fix yourself, but to meet yourself, not as you were told to be, not as you strive to be, but as you truly are. Flawed, yes, but whole. So before you leave, ask yourself quietly, have I been clinging to things that no longer serve me? When was the last time I truly felt the present moment? Can I live from a place where kindness matters more than being right? You don't need to answer now. Just hold the questions. Let them settle in your chest like warm tea in a cold hand. And if this journey has stirred something in you, a memory, a feeling, a realization, stay with it. Let it guide your next gentle step. If this touched your heart, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe to Quiet Wisdom. This space is here for you, always returning, always reflecting. Until next time, take care of your breath, your mind, and the quiet truths that only time can reveal.